So we're going to be top stitching our back pieces. First of all, you need to pin it together and then top stitch it to hold it in place before you start fixing the zipper and then fixing the band. So you do this for the left back piece, you also do the same thing for the right back pieces. So after you're done doing that, you take it to the iron, you iron it and get it all ready for the band. Always make sure you trim off your excess thread. It's very important so that you can have a very well finished work. So we're doing this to the other side too. So if you have any excess fabric, excess lining, trim it off so that your work will be neat, because mistakes in clothing construction multiply. You can't afford to have those little mistakes interfere with your work. So I said something initially about holding the pieces together. So this is the center front, this is the front piece, so you just stop stitch on it. Now knowing fully well that the abdomen kind of gives a curve in front of a lady, what you do is that you get to bevel the front piece. I'm going to bevel by 1 inch. So from the center front piece, I'll measure 1 inch, mark it, then connect it to the low waistline. So it's going to be beveled. It's not a straight line, it's a curved line that extends from the edge of the skirt. Yes, you can see from the edge of the skirt down to that 1 inch line. So the bigger someone's abdomen is, the more you can use. Say someone is very fat, a plus size person, you can use 1.5, you can use 2 inches. In some extreme cases you can even use 2.5 inches. So but in this case, it's for a slim person, we're going to be using only 1 inch. So we'll pin it across and we'll check out the fabric for imbalance. Now imbalance occurs in a situation whereby either the lining is bigger than the fabric or the fabric is bigger than the lining. So when you try to drag the lining to be on the same line, on the same position as the fabric, it tends to form creases around a particular point of the skirt. Sometimes it could be on the upper part, sometimes it could be on the knee, but then you have to sort out your imbalance by completing the one that is not up to. In this particular case, I have to arrange it, check for imbalance. I noticed there was the imbalance around the knee area. It's not so balanced. As much as you try to balance, it's not so balanced. So there's this thing about dressmaking, somehow it finds a balance on its own, and when it points you to the balance, you have to work on it. So I discovered that this particular dress has an imbalance. The lining is kind of shorter than the fabric. Now if you notice our cutting techniques, you can see that we were very careful about the cutting, but it's very peculiar with this kind of lining, the imbalance issues and all that. So it's totally normal, it's understandable if you have it in yours too. So all you have to do is just stop fabric to the lining and fill it up so that you have enough balance on the skirts. You don't need any imbalance frustrating this beautifully crafted skirt piece. So an imbalance occurs when the lining, so you can see that already. In this case, the lining is not up to the length of this fabric, so I'm using a fabric to complete the length. You can actually use a lining to complete your length, it's all up to you, but I prefer to use a fabric though, because it's firmer, it's stronger, and it also saves me the risk of going through another imbalance issue. The imbalance issue is usually very peculiar with this kind of lining. This is called cotton lining. It's not very peculiar with linings like MJB. MJB is short length lining, so it's kind of harder. It has almost same texture as the Ankara fabric, so you don't have such issues there. Now we are cutting the band. For us to cut the band, you have to measure measure the round waist of the skirt after you have joined it already. Remember, after you have joined it already. Normally your round waist, the round waist measurement we're working with here is 31 inches, and we're going to be adding an extra, say 3 inches extra. But normally I prefer to measure the round waist after joining it. After joining the skirt, it saves me some excess errors of measuring and remeasuring, because you still have to measure the zip area and the overlap that comes with it. So the essence of adding an extra 3, 4, or sometimes even 5 inches is just to give you an extra, like to provide a margin of error in case you make some mistake, or just for overlap, for sewing allowance. Then of course the little margin of error that you eventually cut off. So this time around I'll measure it and then I'll cut it out. So I was saying something earlier about the hard gum stay. The hard gum stay is like paper. It's a white piece of fabric. It's a white fusible. Fusible means you can fuse it, you can attach it to your material. So it's one of the white fusibles. We cut it, we use it to stabilize fabric. The shiny parts of the hard gum stay is the part that has the gum, and then the dull part doesn't have gum. That's where your iron rolls on and gives the heat, so that the parts that has the gum can actually stay. So we cut the hard gum stay exactly the same way we cut our band, and then we fuse them together using the iron. You need very hot iron for this. You can actually sprinkle water, you can actually use steam iron when you don't want to do the whole sprinkling thing. Okay, so here it is. You iron the entire length of the band. After you iron the entire length of the band, remember to take off the pins as you're ironing. It's very important. You iron the front, you iron the back, then you start folding the edges. So you fold the lower edge by ½ inch, the upper edge by ½ inch, then you now fold along the entire midline so that they get to face each other. That's what we're going to be using as our band. Isn't this getting interesting? I hope you're going to practice. It's not just enough to watch this video. You're going to have to practice for you to get to the next level. Okay, so don't get stingy with water. When you're stingy with water, the heat would not hold. It's going to take you twice the length of time it takes to iron when you use water. So when you use water, it's kind of a good insulator of heat, so it collects a lot of heat and then transfers it to the fabric. So you fold midway all the way down and then take it to the fabric. So just make sure you iron properly, because the beauty and the standard of your band depends on it. So now we're about to sort out our imbalance issues. Remember, I brought an excess piece of fabric and attached it to the lining, and right now we're going to attach them to each other using ½ inch sewing allowance. So we'll feed it into the machine, we'll run our stitch all straight down. No special technique is required. All you just have to do is just cover it up, make it up to the level, pin it, top stitch, and then we're done. So after you're done joining the fabric, you pin it together so that you'll be able to get the level. Turn over to the front so that you can use the main fabric as the border to do the trimming. So now you can trim off your extra fabric and you top stitch before you attach your side piece, and then you can now attach your band to it. Remember, you have to trim off any excesses on top of it, trim off your extra thread and do it very nicely. So here we have the two back pieces. Remember what we did in the other skirts. Before you attach the back piece to the front piece, you must fix your zipper first. So we attach the two back pieces using 1 inch sewing allowance. So we take our distance of about 8 inches for our zip. Then from that place we measure 1 inch, all nice and clean, and measure 1 inch, pin it down and mark it all down to the edge, to the lower part of the skirt. So we open seam iron, the place we join together, you open it and iron in the middle of the seam. So after we open seam iron, we fix our zipper the way we normally fix our zipper. Same method we used for the pencil skirts. We used the closed method for the pencil skirts, so that's what we're going to be using to fix the skirts this time around. So you stitch all the way down. Remember to reinforce your stitch by back stitching just when you start. So when you're about ending the stitch, you also reinforce your stitch by back stitching and then coming forward too. So you can see the way it is. We take it to the iron, we iron it. So we're done ironing, we'll fix our zipper just the way it's meant to be. Most times you notice the zips we use are excess. It's quite rare to find, almost rare around here to find the zip that will get exactly to the level you want and then still have the same strength you need. So most times you find zips that are in the vicinity of 18 inches, 20 inches, 22 inches. You can find a zip of 8 to 10 inches, but most of them are usually not strong enough. So we use these ones and we cut them along the way. It's a kind of waste, but that's the option available. So remember, when you're fixing the cover of your zipper, you have to mark 0.5 inches from the edge of your zipper to the point where you're going to stitch. So make sure your zip is well overlapped, make sure your zip is well covered, and you can be able to mark it very well. If it's not okay, you can always feel free to remove your pins and redo it. You can do it as many times as possible. It's okay to fail, but then the important thing is that you learn the lesson. So remember to mark along your 0.5 inch line. Even though I didn't mark it on this one, I'm a little bit used to sewing 0.5 inches. If you don't mark it on yours, you might end up sewing in a zigzag manner, and that won't be very good for your stitches. So stick to your stitches, and when we get to the edge, we'll open the zip and join on the sides. So you can see how our zip looks. We're always very careful to cut out the excess thread, excess fabrics, and all those kind of things that give your work a local effect. Make sure you cut them out once and for all. So at this point, we're going to join the front piece and the back piece together using the remaining sewing allowance. So based on our pattern, our remaining sewing allowance is 1.5 inches. So we're going to mark it after pinning it together. Of course, we're going to mark it and we're going to sew along that line. Now there's a challenge a lot of people face while making skirts. You tend to notice that, well, the back is smaller than the front, and you want to help by balancing the front in the middle, or by balancing the back in the middle of the front, and then you now have some excesses on the edges of the front. That is totally wrong. Make sure you hold the edges together. No part should overlap, no part should go inside, and no part should go outside. So you just place it like that, just the way it's meant to be. Do it for the left and do it for the right. So remember to remeasure before you join. You always have to remeasure. You might have made a mistake somewhere along your sewing, and maybe the sewing allowance is no longer enough and you might have to use 1.5 inches. I'm not saying you will, but I'm saying you might have. So you always need to remeasure before you sew. So that's what we're doing. So when you do it, you mark your remaining sewing allowance and you stitch all the way down to the full length. Now be very careful of imbalances when you're done stitching the both sides. This is what we'll have. So you iron very well. You can iron using your steam iron, you can iron using normal dry iron. Sprinkle lots and lots of water, allow the heat of the iron to absorb the heat and thereby transfer the heat to the fabric. So after we're done ironing, we'll take it back to the machine to fix the band. So for us to fix the band, we'll turn to the inside and notch. You slant it downwards. Now the essence of notching is that you need it to balance. You need a situation whereby when you fix the band, it sits well balanced on the sides and not looking like something is pulling it, like there's a kind of tension, which is usually the case when you don't notch. So you start fixing your band from one edge to the other. So remember what I said in the previous video about the cover. So this is the cover of the zip. You overlap the cover of the zip by about 1.5 inches. So you start stitching from that point, not from the 1.5 inch point, the point after the 1.5 inches. So you're going to join it from this time around. You're going to break the rule of dressmaking. Normally we join front to front, but this time around you're going to join the front of the band to the back of the fabric, because we need to still flip it over. So you're going to join them together using 0.5 inches. Take it all down to the edge of the other side. Somehow in cutting this band I didn't follow somehow in cutting this band, my band is a little bit shorter, and I have to add some fabric to it so that I can increase the length, as you can see. So I just add the fabric to it, then increase the length and complete it. Remember, we folded the band using 0.5 inches up and 0.5 inches down. So that 0.5 inch fold line is where we're going to be stitching on. You're not going to stitch any other place for now, so you're just going to be stitching on the 0.5 inch line. That's the line you're using to connect it to the main skirt. So look what we have after we've attached our band. We have our well gum stayed band. Now this is how it's meant to flip up to cover in the skirt. So for us to get that flip forward, we have to go backwards. Yes, you heard me right, we have to go backwards. So here the flip forward goes backwards so that we can turn it up the other way and cover up our skirts. So you remember I left about 1.5 inches before starting, so I'm going to measure from that edge about 0.5 inches and stitch. When we stitch, we notch, trim off the excess thread. We can always turn over when we are done stitching there. So here we are. So we want to fix the elastic. For us to fix the elastic, we'll fix the elastic on the side pieces. We have a center front piece, we have a side front piece, then we'll have a center back piece and the side back pieces. So you mark in between, you mark the where the side back started to where the side front started. You mark them. That's where you're going to insert the elastic. So you do the same thing for the both sides, for the left side and for the right side. So now we are flipping over. We're flipping over our band on the other side. Now note, on the other side is not the closed part of the zipper, it's the open part of the zipper. So it's going to be kind of open. We're not going to be having a 1 inch overlap here. We're just going to have we're not going to have an overlap at all. So the other 1 inch would overlap over the open part of the zipper. That's what we'll work with. So whatever excess we'll have here is not going to be our overlap. We'll simply trim it off all nice and clean. Make sure it's very clean. So we'll flip it over to the other side. Okay, of course we have to still mark for our elastic from the beginning of the side back to the beginning of the side front. So we're going to insert elastic in between both of them. For this tutorial, we're going to be needing a 1 inch elastic. This is the 1 inch elastic. You can see how stretchy it is. So we're going to stretch it from one point to the other. If you don't stretch it, you wouldn't have that elastic effect. Okay, so you stretch it. You need some muscle to do this. You stretch it from one point to the other. Then you can use the length to cut for the two sides. Okay, you cut and then you cut again. When you are attaching your band, you tend to centralize your band. You place your band just before that midline fold. Your band should not get to the middle fold or exceed that midline fold, because you need to balance your stitch. You need to fold the other part over. So if it gets to it, it won't be very good. So you always have to back stitch, reinforce the stitches on your band so it doesn't get loose on the inside and start looking very tacky. So we do it on the other side, then we also stitch on the other parts that we marked. Then we also repeat the same thing for the other side of the skirt. Okay, here we are, we back stitch, we double stitch. Fine. Remember, avoid the midline like a plague. Don't stitch anything on the midline. Don't send your band to the midline. Just let the midline be. That's where we're going to fold over. So when you place something on top of it, folding over will be a very big problem. So here we are on the other side. We'll fix the band, we'll double stitch, fine. Then we'll cut off the excess thread. Finally, we're gradually coming to the end of the video. It's time for us to flip over. It's time for us to turn over. I know you'll be wondering what is going to happen to the elastic, since it's creating a kind of imbalance on the low waist. Actually, that was the idea. So we'll flip over. When you flip over, you cut off the excess thread, you pin all the way down to the other end of the fabric, all the way down to the other end of the skirt, sorry. So you keep pinning gradually. So when you're pinning along the elastic area, you stretch to pin, you stretch to sew. Yes, that's how it is. So the pin helps you to get the right place you're going to sew on. Without the pinning, you're going to be sewing on all the wrong areas. Okay, here we are. Good. So we're almost done pinning. We'll take it to the sewing machine. As usual, you fit it in, you back stitch, you forward stitch, and you keep stitching. Remember to keep removing your pins as you're stitching. If your pin gets to hit the machine needle, it could be disastrous. Be very careful for your eye anyway. Okay, so after we're done doing this, the next thing we do is to, after trimming off the excesses, we run a stitch in the middle of the area that has the elastic. So for us to run the stitch, we stretch. Don't stitch while it's gathered. You have to stretch so that you can get the full elastic effect and then still get that ruffled effects we want to get. Okay, here. So we'll do the same thing to the other side before we start fixing our hook and eye.